The first dictionary published in America is the Noah Webster Dictionary of 1828, described the original inhabitants of America. American, adjective pertaining to America. American, noun, a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals, or copper-colored races, found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. Ancient American history. One of the American tribes of natives called the Catawba. The Catawba were dispersed during the time there was an English engagement during the Seminole Warfare. The Catawba, who were originally Yamasee, would eventually join the ranks of the Seminole Indians. The following is a document from Peabody Library at Harvard University Museum. And it gives a description of how many saw the American native during earlier times during the settlement of America. This document is from the Peabody Museum at Harvard University. It was written in 1828 by Constantine Samuel Rafinesque to a J. H. McCullough. It is the first letter of a series of 4. It follows. For the Saturday Evening Post. 4 letters. On American history. By Professor Rafinesque, to Dr. J. H. McCullough, of Baltimore. First letter. You appear desirous to learn something more of my researches on the ancient and modern history of North and South America. I feel willing and happy to be able to answer your inquiries, and even to suggest perhaps some new facts. The continent of America has ever been the field of philosophical delusions, as Africa of fables and monsters, and Asia of religious creeds. All the various systems and theories of monks and philosophers on the origin, climate, inhabitants, and sea of America have been repeatedly destroyed by facts, and yet they find to this day many believers. To this day they speak and write of the red men of America, while there is not a red man, nor never was, in this continent. To this day do they attempt to separate the American languages from all others, while their roots and structure are exactly like many in the eastern continent. When we are led by systems, or do not investigate and compare subjects in all their bearings, we are apt to fall into these delusive mistakes. But whoever will take the trouble, as I have done, to compare the features, languages, religions, customs, and sea, of all the nations of the 5 parts of this world, Asia, Europe, Africa, Polynesia, and America, will find, as I have found, that mankind is a unity with many deviations of features, complexions, languages, religions, governments, civilizations, and sea, all derived from single primitive types of those effect, and a common central focus. To evince this result in a single but striking point, doubted to this day by superficial inquirers, it is sufficient to mention that there were in America, before Columbus came, nations and tribes of the following complexions: coppered, tawny, olive, dusky, white or pale yellow, dark brown, and black, but none red unless painted, and that all these complexions are also found in Asia, in Polynesia, and in Africa. The Native American Negroes or Black Indians have been seen in Brazil, Guyana, Caracas, Popayan, Choco, North California, and etc. Some of them, such as the Auroras or Cororas of Cumana, were black, but with fine features and long hair, like the Jolliffes and Gallis of Africa. Others in New California, latitude 32, called Esteros, are like the Hottentots, Numaquas, Tambukis, and many other Nigrition tribes, not black, but dark brown, yet complete Negroes, with large thick lips, broad flat noses, and very ugly, with hair crisped or curly. The Negro features belong to the form of the head rather than the color, since there are in Africa, Asia, and Polynesia, black, brown, yellow, olive, coppery, and even white. Negroes. The American Negroes of Querenqua, in Choco, the great level plain 900 miles long, 90 wide, separating the Andes of South America from the mountains of Panama, were black and with woolly heads in 1506. They are mentioned by Dangleria, and all the early accurate writers. The last 2 travelers who have seen these Negroes, are Stevenson, 20 years travels in South America, London, 1825, and Moline, travels in Colombia, Paris, 1824. Stevenson says that the Indians of Manabí, comprising the districts of Esmeraldas, Riovid, and Atacamas, on the seashore of Popayan, are all Zambos, and produced by a ship full of Negroes who came in the country before the Spaniards, killed the former inhabitants, kept the women and formed a mixed race. They are tall, of a blackish color, with soft curly hair, large eyes, flat noses, thick lips, and while the true Zambos, or modern offspring of Indians and Negroes, are of a deep copper color, with thick hair not curled, small eyes, sharp noses and good lips. In another part of the second volume of Stevenson, is the following passage: the Punkays of Riobamba, in Popayan, have a tradition that once before the Spanish came, they were invaded from the west by a nation of monkeys, and as the Spaniards came the same way, they took them also at first for monkeys. In Moline, the following notice is found: 2 Indians of Choco, whose true name is Guana or Shwana's nation, where Dangaria's Negroes were found, are very ugly and black, and their language harsh and rough. Some words are given which may be compared with other Negro languages. For instance, man Hemeora, woman, Decupera, 1 Amber, 2 Numi, 3 Kumpa, 4 Iapa, 5 Kanambi, and c. In the same quarter, or the west shore of Popayan, we have on record 2 other invasions by sea. The first is that of the giants mentioned by La Vega, in his History of Peru, and the second that of the Skerres nation, 500 years before Columbus, mentioned by Hervers, and c. The white Indians of America have been seen almost everywhere, as well as the bearded Indians, to quote my authorities, would fill many pages. Many tribes in the Antilles, Florida, Guyana, Peru, Chile, and are represented as white as the Spaniards, by the early writers, who had no system to support like modern theorists, and many had bushy beards. In fact, we find all the races, features, and complexions of mankind in America, and we find also out of it many nations with scanty beards, or plucking it as a troublesome appendage. Thus the 3 great divisions of mankind, in regard to their complexion, were found in America, previous to the modern colonization. These 3 races have erroneously been called white, red, and black, to which I have proposed to substitute the terms of pale, tawny, and dark, which describe them completely, although it is not the color, but rather the features, which distinguish them. The geographical corresponding appellations of Caucasian, Amalian, and Nigrition races may be equally objectionable, as well as the traditional names of Japhetian, Semitic, and Ammonian races, be accused they are based upon theoretical origins. Whatever be the names, although once very distinct, and probably the 3 primitive deviations of mankind, they have since, like the primitive languages, become so much entangled, intermixed, and changed, so as to have assumed many other shades: white, whitish, rosy, ruddy, tawny, brown, brownish, blackish, black, ebony, and A similar confusion and intermixture has occurred with languages, which have split from primitive stocks into mother tongues, dead, holy, written, and spoken languages, dialects, and subdialects, and thus in the course of time, producing all the immense varieties of speech that have existed, or do yet exist. All of which
can, however, be traced to each other, by comparative philology deeply searched, in spite of theories and the apparent confusion or diversity and difficulties. May, 1828. CSRAFINESQUE